let me emphasize what Jerry just mentioned, that the U.S. has fallen from 1st to 18th in educational attainment. It's not because we're doing worse than we used to be doing. It's because everybody else got better, and we were stagnant. And so I just want to be clear that it wasn't that we were at some point doing much better with years of schooling or standardized test scores. It's just that we got stuck, and everybody else learned from what the U.S. did during the 20th century, and lots of other countries are passing us by. So it's just time to get busy again and to do what we know we need to do. And it's a really terribly important time in our history. We're going through a fundamental transition, a transformation. In some ways, California is leading in that. You're already majority people of color. The rest of the country is going that direction, and will be there before too long. We're shifting in our population shares in a way that lower achieving groups are becoming a bigger and bigger share, and if we don't bring up people from all groups, we may have already peaked as a nation just because of the mix in the way that's changing. And so I want to suggest to you that it's highly plausible that we can regain our position of international preeminence, but it won't happen by accident. It'll happen because we do it on purpose. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I was just trying to think about the call to action that lots of us are trying to issue, and that lots of people are responding to, and sort of the visceral, personal nature of it. And it occurred to me to ask just this audience, how many of you have children, either children of your own or nephews and nieces, for whom a four-year college degree is probably not the right answer? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so the majority of us. Okay, all three authors on the Pathways report have kids, at least one student at home, one kid at home for whom a standard college degree is probably not the right answer, a four-year college degree. And actually on the plane last night on the way out here, I wrote a poem that's not totally finished off, but I was trying to just find a way to get it. I have a whole collection of poems I've written for educators over the last decade or so. And I usually use them when I talk to teachers or work in schools just to kind of get the ball rolling. And so I assume you're friendly enough that I can share a new poem that's not perfect at this moment, but it just kind of catches the spirit of some of it, because this is not only about kids from less advantaged backgrounds. Okay? A lot of you are not very, we're middle class, but we still have kids who have these same needs as others do. So we're talking about helping kids from all backgrounds who need a way to fit into the world, to make that transition from adolescence into adulthood. So this is called Please Help Me Find a Way. I grew up pretty sure that someday I would go to college, but I tried and college didn't work for me. Now I don't know what to do, and time is passing by so quickly, I'm afraid the world may have no place for me. What am I supposed to do when everybody in my family went to college and has got a big degree? What am I supposed to do when everybody says that college is the only way to be who I should be? Sometimes when I daydream, I think of driving locomotives. Sometimes I think of fixing old TVs. Sometimes I think of doing things that might not make much income, but would still be ways to be contributing. Contributing to how much other people find enjoyment in the lives that they've discovered for themselves. Contributing enough to pay my rent and buy my clothes, instead of feeling like I'm worthless on the shelf. Contributing enough to earn respect from friends and family, so my dad will say that he's so proud of me. I'm telling you these things because I really need to know if there's some hope that I can find my own career. I'm telling you these things because they say that you're somebody who will help me find a way to persevere. Please help me find a way to keep on reaching for my future instead of wanting just to disappear. Please help me find a way to keep believing I'm somebody other people will respect instead of fear. I thank you in advance for what you're going to do to help me. People say that you're someone who really cares. I thank you in advance for keeping hope alive and making sure that in my life there'll be no need to just despair. I'd like to keep believing that I'll find a great career and that my life will be a long, exciting dance. So I've got to get a better ending than that, but that's, you know. Anyway, there are lots more kids than we would hope that are in that position. They're just stuck, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, not knowing what to do next, not being able to find a job, not having much confidence, not taking much initiative. And we just have to find a way to help them to get to where they want to go. I want to talk about a number of things. I plead guilty to having too many slides in this slide deck, and so some things I'm going to flip by fairly quickly. It's a variety of things. It's hard to choose to boil down. And I also want to even start by putting this work in a somewhat broader context. For me, this work is part of what I call the movement for excellence with equity. I think we're in the early phases of a national mobilization. Lots of people are stepping up, trying to contribute. There's lots of social entrepreneurship going on. Just lots of things that are going on, and the Pathways work is one piece of that. And I want to characterize the bigger picture just a little bit before I move on. So we can talk about that. Then the urgency of the challenge, and I'm going to show you just some of the numbers, some you've seen before, some you might not have seen before, that just indicate how urgent this work is. And then there's a question about, well, what should be our goals? How should we articulate? If not college for all, then what? And so we want to talk about that. And maybe it is college for all, but how do we talk about it then? And then finally, just this notion of a pathways system. I mean, we want kids to grow up moving through a series of experiences, each of which adds to their human capital, their social capital, and connects to the next series connects to the next set of experiences in a way that accumulates constructively to get them to the place where they can have a fulfilling life and realize their human potential. And for a lot of kids, the system is just kind of disconnected, right? As we listen to all the folks who are in this room and all the work that you do, as we listen to all the great things that the community college is doing, I was sitting over here and I was thinking, well, if everybody's doing the work, what's the problem? Why are we here? It's just, and so the question is what piece of the work is not done yet? Okay, what's left to do? What's not what it should be? And we need to fill in those blanks and get to working on that. In most places, I mean, I don't know your community, but in most places, the connections are not there. And so you've got lots of people doing lots of things, but I mean, in our community in Boston, the GED programs don't do any placement for a number of them. Okay, so a kid will get their GED, then now what? Doesn't connect them to school, doesn't connect them to work, and so we're all doing our own thing, and then the kids kind of have to find their way from one door to another in that system. And the question is, can we make that work better? Maybe you've already got it working here, but most places don't have it working to the degree that they should. One image that my co-authors and I often use, and we're talking about what we were trying to do with the Pathways report. So you think of a 10-year-old looking up at the future. And I don't know if this mic is on here. I should turn it off there. Too close to another mic. If you think of a 10-year-old looking up at the future, trying to figure out how do I get from being a 10-year-old in 5th grade to being a 25-year-old with a job. And it's like there's a road system, all kinds of pathways, but they're kind of dark, no street lights on. And then when you get out in that pathway system, it's got potholes in it, it's got dead ends, it's got detours, it's got buildings that have the wrong signs on them. It's just a mess. You don't know where the cross streets are. If you start up one pathway and decide you want to change, how do you get to the street over here? And we could do a lot better than we do to both build that road system effectively, but then also help young people understand what it is and make wise choices and get the guidance that they need as they move through it. And it's going to take some new institutional structures to get some of that done. It's going to take some things that do a bit of quality control, that put organizations out of business once in a while when they aren't getting the job done. Take those resources, give them to somebody who's going to use them effectively. One way or another, we need to get it together. So, some ways you think of this point in history where we are as almost an inflection point. If you've ever taken calculus, the inflection point is where the curvature changes. We're going in a certain direction, and then things just kind of change. For those of you who are old enough and can remember the late 60s, this kind of feels like the late 60s, the kind of energy there was at the time, the number of people, the fraction of the society that were stepping up and saying, something's got to be different. We've got to change. And I suppose folks who are 10 or 12 years older than me could say the mid-50s to the early 60s even might have felt that way, but it feels different than it's felt since that time in terms of the issues. Now, inside this movement, there's pretty much consensus. I can go anywhere across the countries and assert that these are the goals of the movement, and people pretty much agree that we want our young people to develop a love of learning, healthy attitudes and dispositions, college and career readiness, 21st century skills, strong performance on state exams. There might be one or two other things, but this is pretty much the list of what the goals are. And if we try to unbundle what we need to think our way through as we go through the movement, this list of things on the screen turns out to be a really useful list. It came to me sitting in a community meeting 15 years ago. People were talking about how to improve outcomes in Roxbury and Boston. And people were just kind of talking past each other and getting frustrated with each other. And I started keeping notes on the nature of the comments that people were making. And they were falling at different levels of this thing I've got on the screen. So there's a whole movement. There's all of us who feel some sense of urgency and some sense of possibility. Okay, we came to the meeting because we felt the urgency, but we also felt the possibility sufficient to make it worth our while to come to the meeting. And then inside the movement, there are goals. And some of the disagreement is at different goals. So there are folks who think early childhood is where we ought to be putting the lion's share of our discretionary resources. There are other people who think it's school to career. There are other people who think we ought to be working hard on parenting across the age range. There are just lots of different ways to talk about what the goals are. For any given goal, you need a strategy. You need at least one strategy that makes sense, that's going to work. So as we start talking about what our goals are, well, how are we going to get there? Theory of change, strategy. For any particular strategy, we need some resources and some authorizations to give us the wherewithal to actually carry that strategy out. And then those resources and authorizations are going to go to support certain kinds of programs and projects, which are the places where the work actually takes place. And then inside those programs and projects, there are going to be some principles and practices that are how the work happens. Okay? And so when we start to unbundle everything there is to think about and try to talk consistently and coherently in some detail, organizing our discourse using this set of words is useful. Okay? And the biggest challenge I find when I go from one place to another, why things aren't happening often, it's because the folks who are in positions of leadership are struggling to frame the discourse. They're struggling to give people a way to have a coherent conversation, okay, to figure out what a division of labor might be that makes sense and to move forth. So it just kind of feels like the Tower of Babel. Lots of people saying lots of things, lots of miscellaneous ideas floating around, and it's hard for folks to get excited and stay excited when you don't have the coherence. And so what I'm suggesting is that anybody in the room who is responsible for helping to organize and structure and moderate the discourse, this set of words, movement, goals, strategies, policies, programs, projects, principles, and practices. If you can describe what you're talking about at each level of that, at each word down that list, you can have a coherent conversation. And you can also structure a conversation to get some of this work done. So I pause on this just that I found it really useful to organize my thinking in terms of these ideas. Then when we think about what the big pieces are, again, how do we chunk the things there are to think about? These 5 circles, parents, teachers, and peers, that's sort of an ecological perspective on where kids live. They're interacting mostly with their parents, their teachers, and their peers. And we want those interactions to be optimally, developmentally healthy and appropriate. Okay, and so trying to make sure those things get fixed. And the employers and community are where a lot of the supports and the resources come from to help us improve what's going on in the interactions with the parents, the teachers, and the peers piece. And so these 5 circles are part of a diagram that looks like this, where each of those 5 has 2 little circles associated with it. And so when I go around and I talk about the movement for excellence with equity, I talk about trying to get the work done in those 10 outer circles. And if we could address each of those 10 outer circles, we'd be making a lot of progress. And there's already work for most communities going on in all these circles, but we don't get it quite right yet. Circle 1 is parenting. Circle 2 is parent-school connections. So circle 1 is family dynamics. If we think about the kids whose challenges bring us here today and what it would be like for their life to go well, to go in the best way all the way from the beginning, it starts at the beginning. Early childhood. You know, what does a great first 3 years of life look like? And how do we prepare parents to provide a great first 3 years of life for their kids? We hosted a conference in June on parenting, a 2-day conference. There are about 3 dozen videos from that conference. It's research-based presentations on how parenting matters. Okay, and the things that parents do that matters. It's agi.harvard.edu is a website if you want to look there. About 3 dozen videos. They're all 10 to 12 minutes. They're short. They're researchers getting right to the point. But there are things that we could tell parents how to do that they could do tonight if they just knew to do them. Just don't think about it. There are about 5 ideas that we're trying to launch a national network of parenting programs, of parenting clubs, that we use video material and other kinds of material to insinuate these ideas. And so some of it's targeted at parents of little kids, and other can be targeted at parents of older kids. But just to give you an example, what are those 5 ideas? First one, talk to your kid continuously once after they're born. Language is encoding on their brains. European babies cry in the rhythm of their mother's native language. Prenatal, they've picked it up and they're reproducing those sound patterns when they cry. Okay, language is encoded very early on. The more language they hear, the more quickly they're going to develop language. Another second idea, gesturing. Use pointing, using hand language with infants accelerates language development. Most parents could do that. It would never occur to them to do it. Another idea, using games with 2-year-olds accelerates math number sense. The games where you might spin the arrow and it settles on a number, and then you take something and you move it a certain number of spaces. With little bitty kids, it's developing their sense of ordinality, sense of sequence, foundations for math. Okay. Another idea, how much freedom a 2-year-old has to crawl around and explore the house predicts visual motor integration by age 4 and math skills by age 8. Okay. It's just because imagine that the mind's eye developing, and you use that mind's eye when you do math. Okay. Nature of the bedtime conversation with a 3-year-old. Combination of easy lower order thinking and higher order thinking questions and discussion in a bedtime conversation with a 3-year-old predicts how much growth there is in comprehension skills from ages 3 to 4. Okay? Probably none of us did all those things with our own kids, right? But none of those things is hard to do. You could do them tonight. So imagine having parenting clubs where people share ideas like that and call each other a couple times a week to say, what have you tried lately? How did it go? How did your kid react? Okay. Those are the kinds of things that we can do. They're just about parenting. And there are other ideas with the older kids about balancing being demanding and structured and having rules with being warm and responsive and sensitive. And being high on both of those in combination is what predicts the best developmental outcomes for the older kids. Okay? And most parents get it out of kilter. They're too far in one direction or another, but imagine working with the parents to get that fixed. So that's part of a movement for excellence with equity, working with parents. Second circle, parent-school relations. I won't say much about that. The third circle, teachers working as professional learning communities to fine-tune their craft, watching each other teach, talking about what they do, reading things together, reviewing things together. For regular courses and for voc tech kinds of courses, just teachers in general, getting better. Fourth circle, is teachers studying their students' work, to understand their students as learners by studying their students' work. Fifth circle is working on peer culture, getting kids to give one another permission to have high aspirations. We're trying to work on something we call the conspiracy to succeed, which is organizing kids to undermine their own peer culture. Because most of them don't like those aspects of their own peer culture that get in the way of achievement, that make them afraid to openly show their interest. The majority of kids hide effort at some point. They pretend they're not trying, they're not interested. Even when they are trying, they are interested. They don't like to have to do that, but they're inside a peer culture. They're trapped inside a peer culture that makes that necessary, or makes it feel like it's necessary. So the conspiracy to succeed is that fifth circle. The sixth circle is affecting how kids work in cooperative learning groups. Often what you get is the most skilled kids, the high achievers, are often intellectual bullies. Okay, they're condescending to the kids who don't understand yet. And so kids can come out of those collaborative work experiences feeling even less efficacious than when they started. So that's what that sixth circle is. The seventh and eighth circle are what we're mainly here to talk about today. That's the pathways agenda, getting employers more engaged. And I'll come back around to talk about getting them engaged around fifth grade, and then having a scaffolded sequence in the kinds of engagement all the way through up into adulthood. So I'll come back around to that. And then ninth and 10th circle are just building a sense of community, places to come together, to develop a sense of collective endeavor and shared interest, so to speak. Okay, so all these are things that we can do. All these are things we've started to do. There's social entrepreneurship, there's lots of activity, and the more that we can cultivate a sense of collective endeavor around these things, the more energy we can apply, and the more we can sustain our effort to get it done, the more we can connect, this county with counties, all the other places around the country, and cross-fertilize and share ideas and celebrate together when we make the progress that we know we can make. Okay, so the Pathways Challenge is that we've been falling behind the rest of the world because they've been catching up, not because we've been getting worse. We were ahead for a long time, but now we're in a situation where the world has changed in ways that our kids are having a hard time finding jobs. The unemployment rate may be stagnant and really high for a really long time. Transition to adulthood is longer. So when I think about the challenge here, it's not only about helping them find jobs and get education. It's about helping them have a reason to get up in the morning during the period when they haven't found a job yet. Okay. There are a lot of kids laying around watching television all day with nothing else to do. How can we get them involved in volunteer activities and having other kinds of arts and sports and whatever? They just give them something to belong to, something around which to build a sense of identity and self-worth until the economy needs them again. Okay. One of the challenges that we don't talk much about when we talk about the Pathways Project is the fact that the demand side of the economy might not be sufficient to soak up all the people that we want to train and get into the economy. And during that period when there just aren't enough jobs to go around. Right now there are a lot of empty jobs where we can't find people who have the skills. Even if we could find all the people who have the skills and we fill all those jobs, there still might be some folks that we can't place yet. Okay? And so as we think about being community, that's also a piece of the challenge, finding ways to occupy ourselves, to give people things to do, places to go in the meantime. The nature of the changes in the market. We know everybody is used to folks saying it used to be the case you could achieve a middle-class lifestyle with no more than a high school degree. Okay? We lived in a blue-collar, lower white-collar neighborhood when I was growing up. My father was a house painter for the most part. He'd been a bus driver. He stopped driving the bus and just painted houses and did some light carpentry work. My mother eventually became a teacher. She graduated the year before I did from college. Okay. But we made enough money, you know, painting houses to have a middle-class lifestyle. I guess maybe some painters may still do that, but it's hard these days without a bit more than just a high school education to get by. You see the middle bullet up here. Between 1973 and 2007, we added 63 million jobs to the economy, but the number of jobs that required no more than a high school education fell by 2 million over that period. What it means for a job to require a certain amount of education is kind of a murky notion, but basically we're talking about who's actually in the jobs. The number of jobs occupied by people with no more than a 2-year education was not growing over that period. It may have slipped backwards some, and there's a prediction that over the next decade or so, we're going to continue to get growth in the need for some post-secondary education. This is just another chart, and I'm going to click through some of these fairly quickly. The PowerPoint will be available afterward, and you can go by and stare at the charts and really take in the graph. There are more numbers here than we're going to have the time to digest. But this is a chart just showing the change from 1973 to 2007 in the percentages of jobs occupied by people with different kinds of education. And the point here is it's post-high school has been growing, high school and less has been shrinking in terms of who's got jobs. Teens and young adults have been hit hardest. You'll see the first 3 bars are from June 2000, the second 3 are from June 2010, and we see for each of these groups, the lightest colored bar is 16 to 19-year-olds, the next one's 21 to 24-year-olds, and then 25 to 54-year-olds. Employment is lower for all 3 of those groups, but it's at depression levels for the teenagers, for the youngest groups. Okay, that's 28.6% employed at that bottom end. This is just another chart that shows by family income what the employment rates are. You know, black kids from families who make less than $20,000 a year. The families that actually may need the kids' income, only 9.2% of those kids have jobs. So we talk about a sense of urgency. Okay, these are patterns that are relevant. High school graduation rates. Most of the high school graduation rate improvement, or what looks like high school graduation improvement over the last few decades, has been GEDs. If you take the GEDs out, there's been virtually no improvement in high school graduation rates for the last 4 decades or so. Okay, the numbers on the horizontal axis here are birth years, the years that people were born, and then it's looking by racial group for all races, whites, blacks, Hispanics, and at the percentage who finish high school not counting the GEDs, and you see it's been flat. A GED is not the equivalent of a high school degree. GEDs are useful mainly insofar as they give you a credential to take the next step. If you need to get into training that requires either a high school degree or a GED, then a GED qualifies you to take that next step. But if you don't take that next step, then the GED pays off hardly at all. Okay? And it's interesting, this is Jim Heckman's work at the University of Chicago. He finds that the students who get GEDs tend to have basic skills, basic reading and math skills, at pretty much the same level as students who get a high school degree. But it's their dispositions, their habits, what some people would call their 21st century skills, that are sometimes lower than high school dropouts. It's persistence, stick-to-itiveness, grit. Okay, and so we've got to work with kids not just on their basic reading and math skills, but we've got to work on things like persistence and so on. We talked earlier about the U.S. falling backward relative to other countries. This chart just shows that I probably shouldn't try to explain it in any detail, but that's number one over here is Korea. Korea was 27th for the kids that were born in the 1960s, but it's first now, and we've dropped to 13th because we've basically been stuck at about the same level through this whole period. So this just is showing that other countries have come up and caught up with us. We talk about college for all, pretending like most people get a college degree and you can't be successful without one. The fact is that only about 40% of our young adults get even a 2-year degree. Only about a third get a 4-year degree. So the majority of people in our society, including the older and younger folks, don't have college degrees. Particularly don't have 4-year college degrees. And actually the majority don't even have a 2-year degree. So people survive, some do very well without these. But it's been politically incorrect to really give our kids much detail on all those options that don't require these longer-term degrees. And even the ones who are getting the degrees are often taking a long time to do it. It's about 56% on-time graduation for regular 4-year colleges, 39% 2-year colleges, although we know a lot of kids who start 2-year colleges aren't really going for the degree. They're going to pick up a course or something. Okay. But on-time graduation is dismal for most of our kids. So again, reasons for a sense of urgency, because I'm emphasizing urgency and possibility. Okay, stagnant high school completion rates, on-time college completion low. I haven't mentioned this too much, but employers complaining that young people don't have the work habits, skills, dispositions that the employers want them to have. We have lots of kids who don't have higher degrees. So just lots of reasons to feel like we can't let this go on. We've got to do something different. So what's the right goal? How should we talk about this? How should we think about it? I don't really like, personally, labeling everything college. When I think college, I'm thinking 4-year degree. It's semantics. Some people get angry at me when I say that. I was talking to kids at one school, and they said, everybody goes to college from our high school. And we talked to everybody about the importance of going to college. And I said, well, what if somebody just wants to be a truck driver and they want to go to truck driving school? They said, oh, that's college. Okay. And so basically what some places are doing is any kind of training you get for anything that gives you a certificate after high school, they're calling it college. I suppose we can go that direction, but I don't like playing semantics. Okay, so we got to figure out, I guess maybe it's a debate, but one way or another, we need to get those semantics straightened out. I think most of us can agree that every young person ought to finish high school and get at least some kind of certification for the world of work after high school. Some kind of a learning experience that equips them to add value for an employer. Okay, what that looks like can be a broad range of things. We ought to promote the idea that all work is honorable. It's not about how much money you earn. Okay? Okay, my own kid who struggles, I say, I just want you to go find somebody to pay you to do something. Okay? I mean, I'll subsidize your wage. I'll give you some extra money, but you need to be doing something that's productive. I'm not worried about how much money it is. Okay? So there's some values that we need to work on in here. But there are lots of different ways to earn those credentials, and some of these are listed here. Community colleges, technical colleges, apprenticeships, military, community service, 4-year colleges are all different ways that we need to let young people know about all those. And here, this is again just repetitive here, that all jobs don't take 4-year college degrees. And so why are we failing so many young people? One reason is our focus has been too narrow. we got really concerned that we were relegating students from some backgrounds to lower tracks, to lower aspirations than was possible. We had racial bias, we had social class bias that was leading some kids who had really strong skills and high aspirations to be targeted too low. And so we said, no, everybody ought to have the opportunity to go to college. Everybody ought to have the opportunity to fully realize their human potential. And so we got around to college for all. But we're kind of just fooling ourselves, or really not fooling ourselves. We just telling lies to ourselves that everybody was going to go get that 4-year college degree. And then you say, well, people say, oh, well, we didn't mean 4-year for everybody. We meant, 2-year for some. And then you get back down into the semantics about where the boundary is between college and not college. Okay, but we got to get it balanced. We've had, once this report came out, my colleague Bill Simons, who was the lead author on the report, has done most of the speaking engagements for the report, but we've gotten speaking invitations from more than half the states around the U.S. and from a number of foreign countries, just because this is the elephant in the room. Okay, lots of people know that college for all, particularly understood as 4-year college for all, is much too narrow. And so folks are stepping up. Folks are saying, yeah, you're right, we got to deal with this. The transition to adulthood has changed for various reasons, partly because of technology, the changes our economy has gone through, but we haven't adjusted. So we need a broader vision, and that's what all of us are buying into. A lot of talk these days about health careers. A lot of us are getting older. Okay. We did a summit. We did a meeting sort of like this in Rhode Island about 6 months ago, and one of the people, I think he might have been the head of the Rhode Island Foundation, okay, he said, because the truth is, he said, we're going to get old, we're going to get sick, and we're going to die. And through that process, we need somebody to help take care of us. And so there's going to be lots of jobs in the health sector, and the majority of them are not going to require 4-year college degrees. And there's a possibility we overshoot because everybody says, oh, we're going to train everybody for health, and then we go and we got too many people, but we're not there yet, right? So health is one area we talk about. Now, why are other countries passing us by? It's not totally clear, but one reason may be that they've been more honest with themselves about the need to provide more vocational and technical education. They've balanced it more. They've given kids a mix of basic skills, but also skills that employers value so that they can move more quickly into the world of work. So that's a possibility. My colleague Bob Schwartz on the project has spent quite a bit of time in Europe understanding the European systems. He's much more up to speed on that than I am. I'm starting to learn more about it, but he's convinced that they know a lot that we need to learn in the European systems, and we tend to be kind of snotty over here. We think we're the best at everything, and we're not going to learn anything from anybody else, and they learn from us, we don't learn from them. And his point is we need to get over that, start going overseas and learning some things about how to give our kids the opportunities that they need, how to engage our employers in the way that some of those other countries do that work. In a number of the other countries, more than half of their high school age students are in some mix of vocational education. And here, this is a chart that you can look at later in the PowerPoint that just shows you for a number of the European countries in particular, from Czech Republic all the way to the United Kingdom, percentages of their high school age kids that are in some mix of voc ed. Just listed dual apprenticeship models in Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, Australia, the school based in Australia and Sweden are all places that are worth trying to learn something from. So why do we think that heavier, more high quality emphasis on voc ed is the direction we ought to be going? Well, there are a number of reasons, and I should say I'm not mainly a voc ed person usually. My emphasis when I'm talking about raising achievement is giving kids basic skills. and dispositions just that they need to do well no matter what they're doing. Okay? We got to find ways to engage them. And one of the arguments for voc ed is having hands-on, authentic work is among the really effective ways to engage young people. Not the only way, but it's among the really effective ways to engage young people. So it's a good way to learn. It's developmentally appropriate. Another reason is that a lot of the places that have passed us by are places that have gone this direction. So if it's working for them, maybe it'll work for us. And then if we're talking about giving kids skills that really do have value in the labor market, we're making that transition easier. Okay? So we don't have to say it's the only way to go or it's the way we have to do it for all our kids, but there's some benefits here that we haven't harvested to the degree that we could or should. Why not? What are the problems? Well, I mentioned earlier this concern with tracking. Now, who gets to decide whether a young person is steered toward a blue-collar, hands-on trade like plumbing or electrician, or whether they're steered toward being a rocket scientist? You know, who gets to decide? Who gets to track kids in that way? The folks who are really afraid, the people who came out, attacked us when we issued this report, were afraid that we were relegating kids from less advantaged backgrounds to lower tracks. Okay. There was one, a blog entry came out the day we issued the report. Harvard study says disadvantaged kids don't deserve a chance in life. Okay. Or something, some language really, really close to that. All right. We had another national organization that I won't name right now. I mean, I debated one member from the organization at one event. My colleague Bob Schwartz debated another member at another event. And their case for not pushing the Pathways agenda is that we're going to relegate too many kids, students of color and kids from less advantaged backgrounds, to lower career trajectories than we should. And so it is a real issue of how do we make sure that young people get well matched. Okay. There's a lot of raggedy work being done these days in the name of career and vocational education. There's a lot of great work, but there's also a lot of pretty raggedy work. And so we're going to need a quality control system in here to assure people that when we go this direction, we really are giving young people high quality learning experiences. When it's good, it's great. Or when it's great, I should say. But sometimes it's not. Okay. And when we start talking about bringing in ideas from other countries, those systems are rooted in decades and centuries even of history and social arrangements. And so we can't just transplant one of those other systems into the U.S. So there are challenges, but it's our generation's responsibility to take on those challenges and to move ahead. So bottom line, we're falling behind. We need to try to catch up. The approach we're talking about is multiple pathways approach, expanded role for employers, and I'll say just a bit more about that as I wrap up over the next 5 minutes. A new social compact with young people, giving them an image of what their opportunity sets are and ideas about what they need to do in order to qualify for those opportunities. We're in this together. We're not just coming and doing it for you entirely. Key elements, a world-class career education system, high-quality career counseling. Most high schools have a ratio of counselors to students that's totally unworkable to give kids any career counseling. Okay. Beyond that, a lot of the counselors don't know how to do career counseling. We don't have in place the systems that would give them the information that they would need in order to do career counseling. Okay. Most young people don't have access to anybody who could really give them good career counseling. So we need to find ways to put that in place. And then work-based learning, chances for kids to spend some time in a workplace, doing a job, getting a sense for what that feels like. There are a number of examples, none of which is perfect, but all of which are prominent and all of which are better than average that we could be learning from. I'm not going to take time to try to talk through those. We got to overcome the cultural resistance that's built up around vocational education. Okay, we moved away from it big time during the 1980s. And a lot of what we moved away from, we should have moved away from. People were training kids for jobs that were 20 years out of date with machines that were in tools that were 20 years out of date. But that doesn't mean the fundamental idea was a bad idea. It just means it was not well executed, and we need to get back and do it well. We need to take some of the stuff that can be done well and scale it up. Expanded role for business people, lots of different things the business community can do, and we won't dwell on those. So we're trying to build a national conversation, trying to engage employers in this agenda, trying to create a national network of pathway states and sometimes regions like this, where we link people together. What can you do? Start the conversation with your colleagues and friends. Champion career counseling. Increase awareness of outstanding examples. Develop more opportunities for work-based learning. Just one example. Jerry didn't know I was going to do this, but just plug him a little bit here. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't mind. Yeah. Was it in your introduction or the one before that talked about me sitting with you and helping to do the surveys? Just a couple of little findings from the survey. We have these questions that pick up whether kids are mastery oriented. I'm highly motivated to do well, work hard to learn as much as I can. Want to learn as much as I can in school. When teachers give homework, I finish it. The question is, when kids have people come to their classes and talk about life and careers, do they agree more afterward with statements like these? And the answer is yes, they do, particularly for 10th and 11th graders. The 9th graders, it seems like it might be a little too early. You can't get their attention as well. But in 10th and 11th grade, here we tell you that kids who got 5 or more visits, as opposed to just 1 or 2 visits, were 24 percentage points more likely to agree with these statements on average, which is not trivial. It's kind of a big chunk. These, whether the kids were talking about their future, spending time with adults talking about plans after high schools, 21 percentage points more likely to agree with statements like these if they'd had 5 or more visitors compared to only 1 or 2 visitors in class. College intentions. When I grow up, I'm likely to have a job that requires a college education. I'm interested in going to college. 27 percentage points more likely to agree with statements like this if they'd had 5 or more visitors instead of only 1 or 2 visitors. So we need to find ways to expose kids to images of possible selves. The Segway program does that. I want to start doing it in 5th grade. There's a program in Boston called They Made It, So Can I. It takes people into 5th grade classrooms to tell their life story beginning when they were 5th graders. Okay? I haven't seen it, but I'm told that the kids really latch on because the people's insecurities, sensitivities come out in their voice and on their face when they're reliving 5th grade. And then they talk it forward. The idea is, imagine if every couple months in 5th grade somebody came to class and told their life story. Okay? Imagine if it's all the way from blue collar to high-level white collar. So the guy who drives the UPS truck comes in and tells his life story. The brain surgeon comes in and tells her life story. Okay? And you get this menu of possible selves in 5th and 6th grade. Then imagine in 7th and 8th grade, you start taking kids to visit businesses. Those warehouses along the highway or the office towers downtown. So they get to go inside and see what it looks like inside a business when people are at work. Maybe visit some places where people from their own neighborhood or family members work. Interact with people who look like them while they're at work to see what it smells like, what it feels like. Okay. 9th and 10th grade, start bringing people into schools to help do some of the counseling work. Programs like Segway, programs like others that will come in and help kids understand what it is they need to get done in those high school years in order to position themselves for what they need later. 11th and 12th grade, more tryout employment, more work integration of work and learning. And all the way through high school, more integration into the curriculum. A lot of teachers don't have any way to know how the material in their curriculum is applied in real life in the world of business. Okay. We're thinking about developing a video series at Harvard using undergraduates and faculty with a title, "Why Would I Want to Know That?" So 10-minute videos, 5 to 10-minute videos, where we take topics in the middle and high school curriculum and have a Harvard student, with emphasizing students of color that look like some of the kids in the least advantaged schools, but mixes of Harvard students interviewing faculty on why would I want to know that? Okay, and the student and the faculty interacting in a way that makes it clear. That could be kind of interesting, all right? And then we get to the community college level, better integrated work and learning, better articulation between employers and the institutions than we've often had. Okay, so I'm going to end with another poem. This is a poem that I did for high school teachers to get them to be more empathetic with their students, but it's got some pathways, themes in it, and so we'll just stop with this one. It's called Hardships and Distraction. And it goes as follows. Going to have my dinner at my grandma's house today. My mom's is staying late for work to make some extra pay. Got a lot of homework, but I'm worried about my mom, so that makes it hard to concentrate. My mind feels like a bomb. Also got to make sure I wash some clothes to wear, and I got to get that stuff I need to tame my crazy hair. And while I'm doing that, I use the phone to make some calls to tell my friends the time and place for Friday at the mall. And sometime between now and then, I got to get some dough, because I ain't going to the mall all destitute and po'. I know I should focus on that test I got in math. But my English paper's due soon, too. I need some help, real bad. Some teachers think I just don't care. Some think I'm not trying. I think I'm caught in a trap. Sometimes I just start crying. But no one ever sees my tears, because I just show the tough side. I like to seem real in control. If not book smart, then streetwise. I wish my teachers understood what it's like to be me, to see my life the way I do, the whole complexity. They see how hard it is to keep so many things in focus. They see how blurry things can get, how stuff can seem so hopeless. My teacher said I best to be ready when I take that test in math, but I ain't got no help at home. I never knew my dad. I want to go to college, but for that I need good grades, and based on what my grades are now, there may not be a way. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need someone who's wise to help me figure out which way to turn, to empathize. But let me stop daydreaming, because I got a lot to do. If I don't start my homework soon, I never will get through. If I try and still can't do it, just won't hand it in. But if I don't try, I'll never know. So here goes. I'll begin. Every day I pray to find someone to guide me and to care. Is there any chance that you could be the answer to my prayer? I know the folks in this room are trying to be the answers to lots of good kids' prayers, and let's do it. Okay.